Welcome to At the Root of Knowledge, a podcast by Philip Barzik and Daniel Sheck.
Welcome to At the Root of Knowledge, where we discuss timeless principles and attempt to apply them to modern problems. Our primary concern is to learn and share the truth. On our show, we discuss topics such as human nature, virtue, vice, and divine law. I am Daniel Sheck, and with me is my co-host, Phil Barzik. Bear in mind, we are not experts. Just like you, we're here to learn. On this episode, we will discuss friendship. We're going to talk about what it is, why it is important, what the ideal friendship would look like, and the reward one can expect from maintaining good friendships.
Hello, Daniel. How are you?
Better than I deserve. How are you, Phil?
Doing well. So, are you excited to talk about friendship?
Yeah, excited and a little bit nervous. It's a big topic, and it's going to be hard to do it justice.
I agree. I think it'll be quite the challenge, but I'm feeling up to it.
I'm up to it if you're up to it.
All right, well, let's get started.
All right.
I thought we would start with a little bit of a personal experience of friendship.
Okay.
So, in my experience of friendship, I've had both good and bad experiences. I would classify my good experiences as people who were supportive of me and who gave me a really good ideal, something to look up to, and something to aspire towards, whether that be their personality or some characteristic or trait that they have. And inversely, I think that my bad experiences were people who really could serve as a reference for the undesirable things that I would see in them or that I did not want to see in myself that maybe we both had. So in all, my friends have served as sort of guides for me to how I want to live my life and really what I want to see in myself.
Yeah. From my experience, I've had mixed results.
Okay.
I've definitely got more good than bad. I mean, just in my relationships with other people in general. I've had I would say it all comes back to how I handled it 100%. I think many of the relationships I got in with people, which I would call friendships, I never should have been in the first place. I put my trust in the wrong people. I gave my time to the wrong people. Just friendships that bred weakness. Like I couldn't even begin to tell you about all the times when I was younger in the past, not that much younger. I would sit by people in conversations and go along with stuff that was bad, stuff I didn't agree with, stuff I knew was immoral. And I don't think that's good or healthy. I definitely don't think that's something to strive for. But on the other hand, I've been in a lot of friendships that have been good, where the people have actually been concerned about my well-being and my welfare. Those relationships have really served me very well. And I think they've helped me realize how much I need to help other people get better. Friendships, they're a huge part of my life. They're a big part of my free time. That's what I usually give my free time to, is my friends, my family. And when I look forward, I think a lot about my future, and it usually involves the people I love. So yeah.
Sounds like we've both had some negative experiences, but overall, pretty good experience with friends.
Yeah, I'd say my good experiences have far outweighed my bad ones.
Definitely.
And I say it a lot. I'm better than I deserve, a term that Dave Ramsey's famous for. I don't know if he came up with it or not. He wasn't the first person I heard say it, but I am much better than I deserve. And to complain about the bad relationships I've had with people, it does a horrible injustice to all of the free stuff I don't deserve.
Yeah. I've definitely had some great friends, and I don't think I've been worthy of it either, but strive for that every day. Strive to be worthy.
Yeah. So I think that pretty well says our experience with it. So I think we should move on to the next topic, which is the definition of friendship. So how would you define a friend?
Well, I think that a friend, just in the common term that so many people use it in, here in I have Webster's definition, is a person who one knows well and is fond of. I think that's an okay definition for the general term of friend, but I think that a true friend deserves a different definition. So I did some searching and found a definition that I like. It's a close association between two people marked by the feelings of care, respect, admiration, concern, or even love.
Or even love.
Yes.
I see.
I think
it kind of puts it out there as like a, well, it's not necessary. Like, that could be part of a friendship.
Well, I think that it should be part of a true friendship.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in this case they're using love as a more general term, as opposed to, again, the pinpointed term that I would say love is under, which is more of a willingness to sacrifice and to really put the other's needs above your own.
Right, willing to forego things that benefit you to help someone else.
Yes.
Yep.
How would you define friendship?
Well, I think friendship is a commitment. It is a commitment between two people, or just one person to another person, to love. Most fundamentally, that's what the commitment is. It's to love. And kind of a definition of love, if you will, is a willingness to sacrifice comfort and resources, like you said,
right,
for the well-being of someone else.
Yeah. I think that's a really good way of putting it, that it's not only a feeling of love, as you said, it's a commitment of love. It's a commitment of being having a certain amount of respect and admiration for that person.
Yes, but I think you can love someone without having respect and admiration for them. It might be harder, but I
Yes.
think you can do it. And I would argue that you should do it for everyone.
I think that's a very good point. But as you said, it may be a lot harder to love someone who you don't respect.
Oh, astronomically more difficult. Yeah, I would say it's way, way, way harder to love someone you don't respect. If someone really bothers you and annoys you, it's very difficult a lot of times to remember that you don't hate them, or to not hate them in the first place. Getting in heated arguments and disagreements makes it. I remember one of my teachers, won't say his name, won't say the class, won't even say the school, but one of my teachers kind of poked at me for being a Catholic. Not hard, but I felt like I had to defend myself. And I didn't yell at him. I'm not an aggressive person, usually. Like, I'm not aggressive unless I really feel like I have to be. I do a pretty good job not starting fights, and I've, for the most part, always been that way, which I think has helped me in many cases, and in some cases has made it worse because I've put, avoiding conflict above the greater good of communication and relationships and just other people's greater good. But that's besides the point. Anyway, I was starting to get really frustrated with this teacher and wanting to completely let go of him, but then I remembered, wait a second, I don't have to get mad at him. I love him. Why? Because I'm told to, and that's what I want to do. I'd actually quote Proverbs 17:17. King David goes into explaining what a friend is.
Yes.
And he says, "He that is a friend loveth at all times. A brother is proven in distress."
That's a really good quote that you have there. And I think it sort of exemplifies the saying that tough times will show you who your true friends are.
Yeah.
That's not the exact saying, but you get
the point, yeah.
Yes, you get the point that when things are not going well, that's when you're going to find out who your true friends really are.
Right, because if it's hard, why would they be there unless they loved you?
Right. Because they're willing to sacrifice, as you said, goods and services.
Right, because not all about them.
Right.
They care about you.
Yes. I think that was a pretty good definition. One of the things that I'd like to put in along with the definition is the types of friendship that you might encounter.
Okay.
So, Aristotle defines these types of friendship in his book, the Nicomachean Ethics.
Yeah, it's a big word, isn't it?
It is. Or maybe I'm just incompetent or illiterate.
Well, maybe. I don't think you are.
I hope not. Anyway, so he defines these types of friend as such, which is friends of utility, friends of delight, and friends of virtue. I have here an excerpt from Nicomachean Ethics. He states that those who suppose that there are only one kind of friendship because it admits of degrees go upon insufficient grounds, things that differ in kind may also differ in degree.
Mm-hmm.
So, to sort of clarify that in my own head, I've sort of taken that to mean that he's justifying that there are different kinds of friendship. Because you may say that you have a friend, and then you may say you have your good friend, and then you may say you have your best friend. That could be your degrees of friends. But he says that if they may differ in degree, but they can also differ in what kind or type of friend they are. And so when he defines the friends of utility, he has this to say: now those who love one another wish one another good in respect of that which the motive of their love. Those, therefore, whose love for one another is based on the useful do not love each other for what they are, but only insofar as each gets some good from the other. He goes on to say the same thing about friendships of delight. He states, it is the same also for those whose affection is based on pleasure. People care for a wit, for instance, not for what he is, but as the source of pleasure to themselves. So he's really defining these two, the friendships of utility and the friendships of delight, as friendships that consist of conditional love, and that those friendships, once the original reason for that friendship dissipates, which he's saying that eventually it will, that there is nothing left really for the friendship. He also says this: these friendships then are accidental, for the object of the affection is loved not as being the person or character that he is, but as the source of some good or some pleasure.
Aristotle was a smart guy.
He was. He really figured out that when a friendship is based on something that isn't permanent, like something that may be useful at the time or something that may be delightful at the time, once that initial delight or utility is gone, that the friendship will fade. And I'd just like to back that statement up with this thing that he also says, which is, on the disappearance, therefore, of that which was the motive of their friendship, the friendship itself is dissolved, since it existed solely with a view of that.
Yeah, as soon as the means is gone, I'm sorry, as soon as the end for the means of the friendship is gone, then what's the friendship? It's not really a friendship, it's more like a working relationship, I'd say. Because that's not how I would define a friendship. A friendship, being a friend to someone, is wanting their benefit, wanting to help them and being willing to sacrifice for them, and it has nothing to do with what you get out of it. I mean, what you get out of it might be a good reward for the friendship, but I don't think that's what actually constitutes the friendship.
Right. And I think that alludes perfectly to the friendship of virtue, which in my research on friendships of virtue, I also heard it classified as a complete friendship or a friendship of the good. And in this excerpt here I have from Aristotle, he says this about friendships of virtue. But the kind of friendship is that of good men. I'm sorry. But the perfect kind of friendship is that of good men who resemble one another in virtue. For they both alike wish well to one another as good men, and it is their essential character to be good men. And those who wish well to their friends for the friend's sake are friends in the truest sense. For they have these sentiments towards each other as being what they are, and not in an accidental way. Their friendship, therefore, lasts as long as their virtue, and that is a lasting thing.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I think he hit the nail right on the head. I don't really have anything to complain about or say correct or criticize. I think he
Right.
put it much better than I
mean,
could have.
I think so too. I think it's very hard to criticize Aristotle when he describes it in such a beautiful way, that when friendships are defined by something that lasts so long as virtue, that it really will show that that's really a point that should be the building block for your friendship. It shouldn't be how useful someone is or how much pleasure that they bring you. It should be the virtues that you admire in them.
Right. I would say, really, does your relationship with each other bring either of you closer to God?
Right.
That's a good measure.
It is a good measure. I would say a similar thing, that does your friendship make you both better people? And I think that what you said about bringing you closer to God, that would be a measure of being a better person.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Aristotle sums it up pretty well.
Yep. And so moving to the next topic, I would like to talk about some of the components that go into friendship and really look at it from the perspective of what would the ideal friendship look like.
Okay.
So, first point we have down is integrity. Now, I think the ideal friendship is going to consist of two people with the highest level of integrity they're capable of attaining. I think Ralph Waldo Emerson put it very well when he said, speaking about integrity and individuality. I'll step back for a minute, actually. When I say integrity, I mean your commitment and willingness to uphold the values that you hold dear, the things that you hold important, unwillingness to flex in your character. That's what I see as integrity, strength, in a sense, I suppose.
Yes, but also I would say, when you say unwillingness to bend or to flex, I think that's not only when...
Your morals is what I'm talking about.
Yes, in your morals and your principles.
Mm-hmm.
It's not only when it's easy or when everyone is watching, it's when no one is around.
Yeah, 100%.
Or when, it's really hard to, because it seems like you're in a debate about it and you're losing that debate. It can be very hard not to bend in your principles. And let's say you have the principle to love thy neighbor as thyself. Well, it could be really hard to not snap at someone who's completely dismantling your argument in a debate.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think like by nature of integrity, there's a certain element of individualism that gets brought into it, independence.
I think
because
sorry, go ahead.
You have to be able to exercise yourself as your own unique individual person. And
yes, and I think part of that, when you're exercising yourself as your own individual person, and when you're standing up for yourself, I think that brings an element of courage into
definitely
it.
Definitely.
So,
you're not going to just go along to get along. You'll stick out like a sore thumb if you have to not break your values. I mean, not saying that you'll go out and have to exercise that stuff without need, but you would
you'll go out and you'll seek to stick out like a sore thumb.
But you'd be willing to do it if you had to.
Exactly.
And right, so Ralph Waldo Emerson said something I think that put it very well in his book Friendship. He was describing the necessity of the two people having to be individuals, and he said the two must be very separate before they can be very one. And I think that sums it up very well. If one person is just gonna go along, which you see a lot of people do, and I know I've done it in the past, you kind of just go into the flow of wherever they put you with conversation. Like
right.
An example.
It's almost like a personality mirroring.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
An example I would think of is you go hang out with one of your coworkers, and this one coworker is always talking bad about other people. Well, maybe you don't want to talk about other people, and you especially don't want to talk bad about them, but you find that you are talking about other people and maybe even pointing out other people's flaws when you're with this person, and that's bad, and that's not integrity. Integrity would be, well, how would you want to handle it? How would you ideally handle it and exercise it that way? Would you look at it and go, no, if you got a problem with him, I say we call him right now and bring this to his attention. Like, that's integrity. That's integrity right there. Being willing to do that.
Right. Having the courage to do it. And also, if you're in the wrong, say, and you've criticized that person, I think another element of integrity would be having the humility to admit that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
As Stephen Covey says in his book Primary Greatness, he says, humility is the mother of all virtues, courage the father, integrity the child, and wisdom the grandchild.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
almost, humility and courage are going to act as your cornerstones for integrity. If you have the courage to stand up for what you believe in,
and humility to admit when you're wrong.
Yes. Then you will have integrity of character.
Yep.
And with integrity, you will gain a certain amount of wisdom.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Because you'll be consistent in how you live your life, and what you say will reflect your actions that you have lived your life with.
And you know what I think is crazy? I interviewed for school for a school project, a speech I gave several months ago, last fall actually, or last summer. I interviewed with Brian Berger, a police officer, and we talked about integrity. That was a very big part. My speech was on the difference between, because he's a police officer and he's got to see through people and see when they're just putting a show on.
Right.
Like maybe you've seen it in some salesmen before, some less than virtuous salesmen.
Mm-hmm.
They're not, you can tell, like, your meter for, stuff that's not true is going, and the red line. Anyway, getting off topic a little bit, but coming back, he said, I asked him, how would you know somebody with integrity? How would you know a genuine person versus someone who is concerned about appearance and reputation? And he said, someone with integrity is a person that will go out of his way to make sure someone has the truth. And then he gave an example. Maybe you realize you said something that wasn't true, and you didn't necessarily mean it or realize it at the time, or maybe you did. Either way, and you realized it later, you would go back out of your way to make sure that person left with the truth. He said that would be a marker of a person with integrity. So that's someone with the humility to admit that they said something that was not true and they were wrong to do it, and the courage to go back and point it out to someone else.
Yes.
And that is integrity.
That is a great example of it. In fact, it spurred another example that I would like to give, that maybe there's a case where you've disrespected your superior at work, or maybe you've disrespected your parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I think integrity is really having the courage to go back, having the humility to admit what you did, to admit that you were wrong to disrespect them in that way, and having the courage to apologize for it and to seek their forgiveness for what you said.
Yes, I would say that is a good definition of integrity. And the reason I think that's so important in friendship is in one part because of what Ralph Waldo Emerson said, but I think more than that, I mean, it's necessary for any good relationship at all, because I believe all good relationships are built on trust. Without trust, a good relationship cannot exist. And I read a book called Professionalism is for Everyone several times. I read this book a lot of times. I recommend it to everyone. It's a simple read, but it's a good book. Anyway, in that book, James Ball says that trust is the level of faith we put in others' integrity. And that's why integrity is important, because without it, there can't be trust. And without trust, you can't have a good relationship.
Yes. And I mean, you talk about trust in a friendship. When you're trusting someone, let's say you're trusting a friend to, you use the example that your car is broken down and you have to get to work.
Mm-hmm.
And you've asked your friend to pick you up and take you to work for, we'll say, the next week till your car gets out of the shop. Well, you've trusted your friend now to get you there from point A to point B. So you would want someone who has the integrity when they commit to that.
To mean it.
To mean it, exactly. You want someone who's dependable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that part of integrity is being a dependable person. Not only a dependable person, but an accountable person.
Oh, most definitely.
That you can hold yourself accountable for your own actions, but also you hold others accountable for what they have said.
Right. And I would say that to anyone I call my friend, I mean, even to you, especially to you, hold me accountable to the things I say. That's what I want from my friends, to keep me honest.
Yeah, that's a really great point there, that your friend should be able to hold you accountable for what you said. If you say, well, I want to go on a diet and, I want to stop eating junk food and eat healthy. Well, maybe if the next night you're saying something about going out to eat at a fast food restaurant, I think a friend who has a lot of integrity would be willing to at least question you in, well, you said you were going on a diet, so maybe we don't go out to eat. But then also maybe they offer a solution. Maybe they say something like, well, you were going on a diet, so instead of going out to eat, maybe we go to the local grocery, pick up some food, and we go and find a healthy solution, healthy alternative.
Yeah. Or, maybe I can make you dinner.
Right. Right.
That'd be the type of friend I would want. Maybe they'll cook me dinner.
Yeah.
I won't say no to free food.
No, I don't think I would either. Well, as long as it's edible.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that pretty well wraps up why integrity is important. There's a lot more that could be said, but we're going to move to openness. Let's talk about why openness is a good thing in good friendships. I think in the ideal friendship, both parties are free to give their opinion, speak openly about how they feel, and they'll allow themselves to be completely vulnerable in front of the other person because they regard the relationship higher than the risk of embarrassment between the two people. And they trust them. They trust them with the vulnerable parts of them, the vulnerable truths. They trust them not to share it, not to exploit them, not to hurt them with it.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. I would say that, when you're opening yourself up like that and you're being vulnerable, you're also inviting the other, your friend, to share their vulnerability as well, and through that you're building trust.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Coyle, in his book called The Culture Code, he actually interviewed a Navy SEAL about the topic of vulnerability. And this is how the Navy SEAL commander puts it. He says, "I messed up are the most important words any leader can say."
Yeah, because everybody's going to do it. And if you can't be open and tell people that when you do mess up, they're not going to trust you to tell them when you have to.
Right. They don't think that you're dependable. And when you don't do that, it shows a level of your integrity. And so I think when you leave yourself vulnerable, people will trust you more through that.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think it's good to build relationships on, well, this is what they'll see if I behave this way. But it is a part of it, and being open and allowing yourself to be vulnerable will show people that you're not too arrogant to listen, and you're not too arrogant to admit to your mistakes. I know, at least in my life, a lot of the times I've opened up to other people and allowed myself to feel comfortable with other people. Those instances have taken place because first the other person was open with me and told me, hey, look, this is how I feel. Or they were willing to admit this is their problems, the personal issues they had. And it's not, I think every relationship I should have with everyone should be professional, and presentable. Not necessarily formal, but at the very least, professional. Like, even my close friends, sure, we can joke around and stuff, but at the end of the day, I still want there to be that integrity. But if you're willing to show people that you're open, if you're willing to be open with other people, they're a lot more likely to be open with you, and to know that they can trust you because you're trusting them when you give them that openness.
Yes. And I think another sort of trait of openness is honesty. I think that if you're really willing to be open with someone, then you're willing to give them your unbiased and honest opinion in whatever they may ask.
Oh, yes, definitely, which isn't always easy. A lot of times
No.
it's very difficult talking to a friend, telling them something. It could be just as hard for you to say it out loud as it is for them to hear it. It could be harder for you to say it than it is for them to hear it a lot of times because it hurts to.
Right.
Especially if you feel like it could be interpreted as criticism, which in a sense it could be.
Yes, but I think that one of the things that would define honesty and truthfulness is that you're willing to say it. As I said, you're open to saying it, even if it is some form of criticism. You're willing to say it, you're open to saying it, and you're going to give your honest opinion, even if that's not necessarily what they want to hear. It may be what they need to hear.
Right. You love them. You care about them. You want what's best for them, and you're willing to make them feel some pain if that's what you have to
Right.
help them.
You said you want what's best for them. I like the way that Jordan Peterson puts it in one of his in one of his lectures. He says, "You want the best for the best part of them."
Right.
That is not necessarily just any part of them. It's their full potential. You want them to meet their full potential and to have a certain standard for themselves.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I concur.
Yes. I think some of that standard actually may stem from respect, both self-respect and mutual respect in a friendship. And I think, some of the characteristics of respect are that, they're willing to respond to you when you come to them with an issue,
Mm-hmm.
that they are willing to make you an important part of their life or important part of their day.
Yeah, they'll stop to listen, and you're not just a pain in their butt all the time. They'll actually be like, this is important to you. Even if it might not seem that important to them, they will make it that important.
Right, and I think that's part of the last bit on respect is that they will make it important. They're going to go above and beyond what you would think that they were going to do, instead of just listening, and they will try to help you to figure out what solution you can derive for whatever problem you may be bringing them.
Yeah, we'll try and help them out. Well, I think that pretty well covers openness and vulnerability.
And honesty, too.
Honesty, right. Which also I think is part of integrity. I think a lot of these topics kind of cross over each other. But the next kind of thing I'd like to talk about is love, and how love would play into the ideal friendship.
Okay.
So do you have anything you have to say before I start running?
Sure. So, I would like to start love by using a definition from Stephen Covey. He uses this in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He says, love is a verb. Love, the feeling, is the fruit of love, the verb. Sacrifice, listening, empathy, appreciation, and affirmation are really what constitutes love. I think that's a a pretty good definition for love. I think there may be a few other things that love really consists of. Like, I would say that love is selfless and that love is timeless. What do you think of that?
Well, we're humans, so love is only going to be as timeless as our commitment is. But I think that true love strives for timelessness, and that is ideally what it would be. Yeah, timeless, potentially timeless. Aristotle was the one who said it lasts as long as virtue does. I'm sorry, could you restate that last little bit you said?
Which part?
Right before I started talking.
That love is selfless.
Yes.
Love is timeless.
Yes. I would say that love is most definitely selfless.
Yes. I'd like to, if I could,
Go for it.
1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4 through 7. This says, charity is patient, is kind. Charity envieth not, dealeth not perversely, is not puffed up, is not ambitious, seeketh not her own, is not provoked to anger, thinketh no evil, rejoice not in iniquity, but rejoiceth with the truth, beareth all things, believeth in all things, hopeth in all things, endureth all things.
Yep.
That really, to me, my interpretation of that is that love is, in essence, selfless.
Yes, real love is selfless, and it's not self-motivated. You don't love someone to benefit you. That's not love. That's utility. That's turning someone or something into a tool.
Yes.
That's actually really good. Well, if it's from the Bible, I feel pretty safe saying it's pretty good. But I had to memorize the first 13 verses of chapter 13 of Corinthians.
That's quite impressive.
Father Jenkins has all of the students from Immaculate Conception to school I went, the academy I went to school at, memorize that before they graduate. And I think about it a lot. I wouldn't say every day, every week, but definitely been several dozen times since I've graduated that's come to mind, and I'm glad he did say that. I can't say that I can recite it all from heart, but a good bit of it I could, and I could definitely, I think, summarize somewhat adequately as my incompetent intelligence is able to summarize it. But yeah, I think that's
a good way of putting it.
Yeah, that's all true.
And also, you said he has all the people who graduate from Immaculate Conception memorize it.
That's correct.
I think graduating from high school in general is sort of the mark when you start your adult life, I feel like, in our culture.
Yeah, that's what our culture pushes for.
Yes, but I like how he had you guys memorize that, because one line, verse 11 actually, is, when I was a child, I spoke as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away the things of a child.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's a good bit of symbolism in the motives behind why you had to memorize the amalgamation of verses.
Well, Father Jenkins is a very, very bright
Individual.
priest. Individual, yes. So yeah, I'm sure that was part of it, and most definitely, you got to grow up, and I think really I would hope you'd be pretty well grown up, or at least well prepared to be ready to be very close to grown up by the time you graduate high school. Because if you're not, world will chew you up and spit you out. And there's so much you don't know until you've experienced it. You know, until you've had to deal with it. You've had to find ways to work through it. But by the time, if you get to high school, if you're planning on just moving out and just living life, like, you're in for a surprise. That is a rough world out there, and it will take advantage of you, and you will get lost. And if you don't have integrity and firm boundaries, you're going to get swept up, just like I've seen so many other people do, and turn to drugs. And not necessarily everybody's going to turn to drugs, but many people will.
And maybe not they'll turn to drugs, but they will turn to some form of a coping mechanism.
Something not good.
Usually, yes.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you leave yourself vulnerable, and not in a good way. You leave yourself vulnerable to be taken advantage of.
Oh, yeah. And I would actually recommend, this is a topic for another night, so I'm not going to keep hitting it hard, but there's a lot I have wrapped up in this whole idea of growing up, especially in today's culture, moving forward, leaving high school, and some important things I think people should realize when they're getting ready to grow up and become their own independent adults, which hopefully starts before you're graduating. It really should. Unfortunately, it doesn't for most people, but I'm going to stop there because I could easily talk for 20 or 30 minutes about that, and it's not really relevant to the topic. But one thing I have to say about love is not my own words. It's actually words of St. John. This is the words of Jesus Christ, written by St. John, chapter 15, verses 12 through 13. This is my commandment, that you love each other as I have loved you. Greater love than this no man hath, that a man lay down his life for his friends. I think that sums it up pretty well in our Lord's own words. Love each other as I have loved you.
Right.
Go ahead.
When he says, as I have loved you, I think, in at least how I'm interpreting it, is that he's referring to his sacrifice and death on the cross.
I think that's no small part of it, especially because he follows up with no greater love than this man hath than to lay down his life for his friends.
Right. That he did that, and he didn't have to, but it was an incredible act that he did that for the salvation of mankind.
Oh, definitely. There's no arguing that at all.
No, and yes, I mean there is no greater love than that love.
Right? And he uses the word friends, at least in the Douay-Rheims translation. He uses the word friends. He doesn't use neighbors, he uses friends. But I think that applies. We've been talking about friends and our relationship with people. I think ideally you would seek to extend your friendship to everybody because you love everybody. But we're humans. That's difficult. I think that's the ideal, is to have the ideal friendship with everybody. Now, can an ideal relationship like that take place with everybody? No, of course not. Some people just simply will not have it.
Right.
They're not concerned about virtue.
Right. Or some people, it's very hard, as we stated earlier, to respect them.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's very hard to have any sort of admiration for how they're living, and
it's very hard to love them.
Yes, it makes it more difficult.
More difficult
to love them.
because you have no respect. And that's
Yes.
the thing. Like,
or if someone's deceitful.
right.
If someone's deceitful, it makes it incredibly hard to love someone if you can't trust them.
Right. Right. I mean, don't trust someone you can't trust. It's a stupid, foolhardy move. Don't respect someone that doesn't deserve it. If they're not going to behave in a way that mandates your respect, or, I mean, your respect is free for you to give. And, it'd be nice to be able to give it to everybody, but some people simply
Don't deserve it.
they don't deserve your respect, and giving it to them is just going to send the wrong message, and it won't do anything helpful.
Right. Or, I mean, even if someone is hostile.
But still love them.
Yes. I'm just saying, if someone is a hostile person, it makes it hard to love them. That certain things, traits and characteristics that are kind of across the board deemed as negative or undesirable, they do make it harder. And I mean, I'm not saying that I'm perfect or that anyone is perfect for that matter. We all have our flaws, but those flaws do make it harder to love someone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it shows in a way your integrity and how much integrity you have in how much you can truly love someone without having to have a certain amount of respect for them.
Right. Yes, I mean, it can be very difficult. Like, you got to really swallow your pride sometimes and bow your head.
Which goes back to what we said in humility.
Right. And, I mean, our Lord said, go low. That's a paraphrase, but he said go low many times. Like, he said, take the lowest seat at the table so that they'll tell you to go higher. And that's not to say, speak less of yourself than what you actually are, but speak of yourself as what you actually are, which is a feeble, fragile, weak human being that is dependent on a lot of things to do things right. People are not anywhere near as strong as they'd like to think they are.
No, they're not.
But so sometimes that's what it requires to love someone, is to go low and to humble yourself so much. I think we were talking about the other day, old people. To be an old people, so many of them are so kind-hearted and loving, but when people get old and weak in their year and they're way up there in their years, like, you've really got to bend down and humble yourself to really. And I think it's a really moving thing if you get the opportunity to help an old person out, but because they can't do stuff on their own, they've got all this wisdom, all this age, all this experience, but a lot of times they're incapable of doing the things that are so easy for us to do.
Right. And I mean, that's just part of age in general, that, eventually your body is going to break down. But I think part of kindness, I would say, is, and some humility, is really the willingness to help someone who's in that state. And maybe it requires an immense amount of patience to help them, because maybe they're short-tempered or something like that. And go ahead.
Yeah, or old people, I mean, maybe they have to wear a diaper or need help getting on the toilet or something like that. That's more or less what I was talking about. You have to go low and swallow it, because I mean, it takes humility to do that. But if it's really motivated by love, I mean, I just think it's if you love an old person, you have that type of relationship, good for you.
Yes.
Like, that's a very...
Yes, and I mean, if you really love someone like that, as Stephen Covey says, one of the things is empathy.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had to help someone to get on the toilet or something like that, you're able to put yourself in their position to a certain degree and say, okay, maybe when I'm that age, somebody will do it for me. Or at least you would hope so.
Yes. Or even not even if that, even if not that, which probably would be the case too, but you'd be able to go, okay, so when I'm old and I'm like this, I'll understand what the people helping me are going through.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Love is a really amazing thing when you see someone who truly articulates it in their actions.
Mm-hmm.
It fills you with a sense of awe. And for me, at least, it fills me with this admiration that I think, wow, like, it's so inspiring to see someone do that just because they care about someone that much.
Oh, yes. It can be very moving to see things like that. So yeah, and I think really love is what it all boils down to. Like, we talk about the components, integrity, openness, but when it comes to friendship, really, if it's a good friendship or a bad friendship, if I was to bring it down to the simplest, most individual thing that goes from friendship, not friendship, real friendship, at least by my definition, is, do they love each other? Or at least does one of them love the other person?
Right.
And without that, I'd say no, it's not a friendship.
Right. Not a good friendship, and maybe not even a friendship worth pursuing anymore.
Right.
But I do think that you shouldn't underestimate the value of love, because if it's a true love, that it's going to be hard to find.
Oh, yes. Yes, because a lot of people aren't willing to do it.
No. And
don't fake it.
A lot of people, yes, that was the point I was about to make, was that a lot of people will try to fake it, and they'll be good at it. But eventually it shows.
Right. And I think that will push us very well into our next point, which is conflict. So just officiating the fact that we're there now.
Ah, okay. Well, I mean, conflict, I think in friendships, it does have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It serves the purpose of, it can make the relationship grow into a deeper and more meaningful relationship. You can learn things that maybe you didn't know. Maybe you had the wrong opinion on something, and they were able to set you straight.
Right.
Or maybe it's the inverse. You had the right opinion, and you were able to set them straight. And you're able to help each other in some way, but you had to do it through a debate or some type of conflict.
Right.
So I do think conflicts have their place in friendship, but also it can lead to be a detriment to the friendship as well.
Well, I would say that really depends on, I would say conflict is only good if it brings something good out of it, if it's motivated to do something good.
Yes.
And which, I mean, I think inevitably in a friendship, a good friendship that's lasting, where the people spend a lot of time together, eventually conflict will come out. I mean, what was the saying? I think I've heard it from a lot of different people. I know Dave Ramsey said it, but I know other people said it too. If both people are of the same opinion in all things in a relationship, one of them is useless.
That's a good way of putting it.
But I think if it's a real friendship that's actually timeless, the conflict won't come between them, because the love isn't dependent on how the other person feels about them at the moment.
Going back to that saying for a second, that sorry, could you say it again?
If two people are of the same opinion in all things, then one of them is useless.
Yeah. And I think that hits home what we said about integrity, how they have to be separate before they can be one.
Mm-hmm.
They have to really have their own
individual person.
Yes, they have to be their own person of character. They have to have their own
standards.
Yes, standards, principles, values, sorts of stuff like that. It has to be separate before it can be one. And if it's already one, then, as you said, one of them is useless.
Right.
Yeah, I really like how...
It's like an echo chamber that one says it and then the other person says it. And that's what conversation, unfortunately, it's very easy for at least for me, for conversations to turn into that. Like between people is just, I think I told you about this before. I know I did. Like it's very easy to just mirror what they want to say.
Yes.
And avoid disagreeing with them and kind of just navigate through, and just match what they put in and try and make them happy. Which goes back to another point that I had in here is that we were just talking about is fake love. It's so easy to do. So easy to do. Like if you're good with people or you're good at talking, actually, if you're good at listening, you can make people think that you care about them a lot faster. And I mean, like I said, the ideal is to care about everyone. Now, granted, your resources can only get spread so thin. You can only give so much of your time away. But I think the ideal is to give as much to everyone as you can, even if that's not necessarily practical for you as a human being. But don't fake. Don't fake. It's better to give less than to fake more, if that makes sense. Because I know I've been guilty of it many times, making people think I care about them more than I actually do by just listening, and then conversation just feed. Ask questions that fake interest. It's horrible. I've been guilty of it many times, and I try not to, but fake interest in other people to get them to like you more, to get them to accept you and talk to you and trust you. It's a bad thing, but it's easy to do. And that will cause way more conflict in the long term, because sooner or later, like you're going to have to be honest, or you're going to have to actually start caring about them like a real friend. And it's going to cause either a lot of internal conflict in you because you're going to have to change a lot, or it's going to create conflict between the two of you because you're like, oh, well, I didn't actually care about you that much. Yeah, going a little bit off on a tangent. But yeah, conflict, it is necessary sometimes.
Yes, it is necessary. But also, I think it can be more than just verbal conflict. Things like jealousy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're jealous of someone, it could be their abilities in a sport, their physical abilities. It could be how smart they are.
Mm-hmm.
I think that will, in some way, pose a conflict. I mean, it may not be as I said, a verbal conflict, but it will still, in some way, show that there is conflict, and it may be an inner conflict that you constantly have this resentment building in you. And I think if you don't find a way to deal with that conflict, that it can lead to be a detriment to the friendship and even cause the end of the friendship.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Like, it can be hard to talk about difficult things, but the pain that comes with discussing it is going to be better than the consequences of leaving in the dark.
Yeah.
Bring it to the light. It'll be hard. See how you feel. And you know what? If it's a good friendship and they actually love you, they'll listen. And as long as your intention is a good intention for them, and hopefully for you too, if that's possible, I mean, ultimately, you're not going to shoot for evil for anyone. You're not going to do something with the intention of doing anything evil for you. But definitely, anyway, you bring that in, then the best thing will result because you're being honest and open about the what you have an issue with.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, that if you do bring it into the light, it can result in something better.
Yeah. And
I think that sometimes we build it up in our heads so much that
we
it's
make it more difficult.
Exactly. It's such a bad thing that we're thinking, or that, oh, this person's going to have this reaction. We have these preconceived notions of what's going to happen, and I've found that a lot of times it doesn't necessarily happen that way.
Yeah, more often than not, it's worse in your head than it is in reality.
Yeah.
More often than not, you actually feel good saying it while you're saying it, as soon as you've come over to the fact that I'm saying it now.
It's a sense of release, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You're getting something off of your chest at that point.
And as long as you don't take it over, like, you know, you're not beating them over the head with something or talking down to them, they'll listen. And chances are, I mean, different people are different, but they'll probably listen.
Yeah.
And just be like, you know, and they're not going to get mad at you. Some people will, but most people won't, I don't think. Unless it's, I mean, it's situationally based, but it's probably not as bad as you think it's going to be. Yeah.
And I think one thing that'll really get you through conflict, as you mentioned, listening, I think concern for the other person's well-being, that really will get you through a conflict, you know? If you truly love them and you truly care about them, that you'll be willing to listen to their problems, whether it's a problem with you, with how you're acting, or say a problem with, you know, just that they feel insufficient.
Oh,
if you're willing to listen to them and you want to help them solve the problem, that it really will benefit both of you. And I'd like to cite Jordan Peterson. He says this in one of his lectures, that he said, a good friend will listen to your problems and help you solve them, and will listen to your successes and help you celebrate.
Definitely. They're going to be willing to make, this is Stephen Covey, they're going to be willing to make what you have to say important to them as you are to them.
Right.
And that's ideally, that's how it would always be. It's hard. It can be very hard to listen. I know for me, at least, if I don't care what you have to say, I mean, it's like auto-tune out. Like, if I'm not interested, it takes a lot of effort to actually sit there and listen and listen. And it's you know, it shows that, okay, well, when that happens, I feel like I ask myself, do I care about this person? Do I actually love this person? Do I want to hear what they have to say? Well, yeah, I want to hear what they have to say, so listen to them, you idiot. And, yeah, and you're willing to say it, regardless of, you know, the potential backlash. Not that you're going after that, but, like, I know one time I can think of where I had a real friend come out for me and say something that made me not feel comfortable, at least in the moment, but I know resulted in something good. A very good example was when I switched programs in school. My dad told me he didn't think I was going to make it. I told you about this before.
Yes.
He didn't think I was going to make it. He said, "You're not going to make it." He's like, I mean, it's not that I don't think you can. He's like, I'm completely certain you can do it. He's like, but if I was a betting man, I'd put money against you. He said, and he basically explained he knows who I am, and he thought it was beyond my level of maturity or character or what have you to follow through. And you know, God, I think God and my family and all the things that have been given to me have really helped push me through it. I won't give them credit for it, but there's definitely been a big help and I'm about to
Oh, yeah.
graduate in a couple months.
Right. And that goes back to what I said earlier in some part about being truthful, that he told you not what you wanted to hear, he told you what you needed to hear.
Right, and it was very hard. It was when he said that, I was conflicted for days. I thought about that, 'cause he said it very blunt, very matter-of-factly, and like my initial response was anger, but within a matter of seconds after he started talking, it was like, okay, I'll calm down and listen, 'cause he's just telling me what he thinks, and I thought about it.
Yes,
and
but
I
he was
continued.
coming from a place of concern.
Yes, and I think I got some very good out of. I think I got a lot of good out of what he said, and I'm glad he did say those things.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you wouldn't be here if he hadn't said those things. It's
Maybe.
It's
I mean,
hard
I
to
doubt
think.
it, but maybe.
What the ripple effect might have been.
Could be. Yeah, you never know. There's a lot of it's a very complex system, reality is. But I think another point in conflict, differences are difficult. Differences are very difficult because it's very easy to get defensive.
It is.
And it's very easy to offend someone by just stating something that you see as a matter of fact. Let's say differences in religion or whatever.
Or principles.
Or principles.
Worldviews or political views.
Right.
You
And
see it as self-evident, and
they don't.
they don't. They see it completely opposite.
Right. And like abortion. Like I am so strongly against abortion. I will.
Correct.
I won't. No. I think that's I think it like is so atrocious. I can't put it into words how terrible it is that people do that at all. That is completely terrifying, but other people don't see it that way. They do not see it that way at all. And I start talking about abortion in front of some people, oh, they're going to get heated. They're going to get real hot, really, really hot, that I am willing to infringe on their rights and their freedom as an individual and their freedom from the consequences of their decisions. Okay. See, like that would have triggered them right there.
Yeah.
Because that's my argument. And that's, like, and I believe even if someone's wrong, dead wrong, see, this would really trigger them very badly, probably, I'm guessing, dead wrong on something, that doesn't mean you can't be friends with them. That does not,
No.
if the relation, like, you cannot hold a good friendship with them. But that stuff is hard. That is really hard in a close relationship.
It is very hard in a close relationship because it seems like there is a certain amount of tension that is just constant.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually it pushes you to the point where you can't stand it anymore. And
It could.
it could lead to some form of confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
But as you were saying, people, it triggers their anger because it's such a different outlook.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I agree with you that I think abortion is an atrocious thing. And I don't think that, just saying that abortion is illegal or not right is going to solve the bigger picture problem
Mm-hmm.
that may be out there. But I think it could be a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Well, why don't we
It is.
stop promoting killing babies is my argument. But that's not what we're here to talk about.
But that's not the way other people see it.
Yeah.
And it does make it very hard to have any sort of friendship with someone who differs in beliefs, and in which both of you feel very strongly about the beliefs.
Right. And like your integrity tells you if it's right, do it. If it's right, support it. Or whatever your integrity tells you. Okay, that's too vague. Whatever you know is right, your integrity tells you to support. But even if someone's wrong, if you think a good relationship can exist, I think it's worth it to just get past it. Just get past it. And
I mean, it's not an easy thing to just get past it. But
it's not. But if
but
both
it's a
of you,
worthwhile thing.
right, especially if you're willing to create a good relationship with the person. And I think people with very, very different opinions can get along and have beautiful relationships. Because I know some people I disagree with hugely that I still would say I have at least somewhat good relationships with. So, but yeah, conflict is necessary.
It is necessary.
And
it can benefit.
Right, and I'm not saying go after conflict, but conflict is a good tool.
Yes.
And when it's necessary, don't be afraid to use it.
Yes, it's a major point, and something that I myself have really struggled with at times is don't be afraid of conflict. Don't be afraid of standing up for what you believe. Have the courage and the integrity to really be strong in your principles.
Definitely.
And your morals, your ethics.
Definitely.
So, I think that one of our last topics here is really the values that friendship can provide in your life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, friendship, it can come at a high cost, though.
It can.
But I think it's well worth it. I would say that it's a very profitable investment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some things that people may very well struggle with is being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that a lot of people, myself included, really struggle with, being vulnerable and feeling like you're leaving yourself open to whatever the other person thinks, and whatever they think could be nothing but bad stuff about you. And if that's the case, then I think at some point you realize, okay, this isn't a friendship that I really want to pursue anymore. If, they treat your vulnerability as a way to just criticize you.
Oh, definitely. That's I don't know if you want to, you still want to be a friend to them, but you can't maintain a friendship relationship, a mutual
That's a
friendship
good way
relationship. Because, like I said, you should be everybody's friend, and that can be so easily misinterpreted. But what I mean by that is love everybody.
Yes.
Really, that's what I'm trying to get at, and act in everybody's best interest as far as you can, as far as you're able to do that.
Yes.
But yeah, talking about the value of friendship, there's not much that really beats that feeling of knowing that someone will be there for you.
Yes, that someone really cares about you and that you
Mm-hmm.
mean something to them.
Yes. And there's a huge amount of security. I feel more secure in my relationship with other people than I do in my relationships with myself, because I know myself very, very well. And
that can be a terrifying thing.
that is a very terrifying thing. And I know it's not that I don't know other people have issues. Oh, they most certainly do. But everything they've shown me is good.
Right, and there's no secrets here. Like, within yourself, there's no secrets.
Mm-hmm.
If you're keeping something from yourself,
you're just lying to yourself.
exactly,
And it.
You're in denial about
Somewhere you know it.
Exactly. Somewhere, it may not be on a conscious level, but somewhere you know what you're doing. But with other people, it's very easy to put them on a pedestal because you only see a small fraction of their life.
Which is fine, and it's actually the way it should be. It can be difficult. But here's the thing. If I want to build a good relationship with you, what do I want that relationship to be built on? What I'm putting into it and what I'm giving to you. Now, if I'm not going to give you bad stuff, and I'm going to keep the bad stuff with me or get rid of it entirely, which is the ideal thing, but at the very least keep it from getting away from me,
Keep it
then
from
why
being a
would
bad
you be concerned
influence.
about it? Why would you be concerned about it at all?
Right.
And in that scenario, why would you be concerned about the problems they have? If you know they love you and they're going to act in your best interest, there's a huge amount of confidence in that. And the value of friendship, this is kind of taken from Stephen Covey, but I mean, a million people have said it. Dave Ramsey said something about it. The relationship you're capable of doing so much more with a good friend. You don't just double your ability. You don't just take what I can do and what you can do as friends and then add them together. No, you take what you can do and then what I can do, and then you add those together, and you also add what we can do together that we never would have been able to do on our own.
That's correct. That's very true. That it's more than just me and you. It's, as you said, me and you, and then together,
our
me
friendship.
And you. Yes. And it will stem to so much more than just doubling what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and with that, I think a really, really good value and a reward of friendship is that, you know, it can be someone who they have a certain aspect of them that you really admire.
Mm-hmm.
And in that admiration, it gives you something to strive towards. It gives you a baseline to set for what you want to do or how you want to see that trait in yourself, you know?
Oh, yes. It gives you something to aspire to. I mean, you're opening a whole new world. A whole new world. You know, when you let someone into your life and let someone actually influence your life and be open to change with someone else, you're opening so many new possibilities.
Yeah.
For growth, for strength, for developing things together. Like, that's the reality we live in, you know?
It is.
And there's so many people who will seclude themselves and they'll go, I'm going to go do my own thing and I won't let anybody, and they think they're strong because they're on their own. And it's the opposite. It's the opposite of that, because they're only as strong as they can be. They're limiting their resources to themselves.
Yes. I mean, they say the lone wolf is the strongest wolf. But even that lone wolf's strength won't add up to
the pack.
Exactly, the combined strength of the pack.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, what that lone wolf has to do is form his own pack.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, he won't be able to survive.
Right. Yeah. And no man is an island.
No.
I don't know who said that, but I did not make that up. That was taken from a poem. An English guy.
Okay.
So, yeah. But you got to know, talking about the value, one of the costs is you're opening yourself up to get hurt in a way you could not possibly imagine without having first experienced these friendship. Because of that vulnerability, you get that whole new world, but you are going to unpack layers of yourself that you didn't even know you had.
Yes.
If you've never experienced a friendship before.
Yes, and you'll be tested a lot. You know, you'll be tested in your character and in your principles, in how your ability to truly love someone. At some point, your friendship will test that.
Mm-hmm.
And it will push it to the point where you feel like it's going to break, or you feel like you can't stand that person anymore because of something.
Oh, yes. You'll get so annoyed that you'll let the annoyance... It'll be very hard to keep the annoyance, and I feel like this happens with everybody. Maybe not, but eventually you get annoyed with people. And for me at least, there gets that point where it's hard to let the love of them stay above the annoyance with them and just get past that because eventually, if you work at it, for me at least, I can get past being annoyed with someone, anyone. Give it enough time, I'll come to say it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they're not hurting me.
Yes.
Or themselves or something.
One thing that either being annoyed with someone or being frustrated with someone, you know, maybe you're trying to teach them something,
mm-hmm.
you know, or you're trying to help them in some way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would like to cite Stephen Covey. He says, "Seek first to understand, then to be understood."
Right.
And it's a really great way to go about it. You know, when someone's annoying you, or when you're being frustrated with someone, you know, really try to seek out, if you really care about them, you should try to seek out how to help them, but not only how to help them, why they're failing at what you're trying to teach them, you know,
And what they actually need.
right, what's the underlying reason? Not just how their actions are making you feel, what's causing them to act in that manner.
Oh, yeah.
Understand that before you try to make it understood that you're being frustrated by it or that you're being annoyed by it.
Right. Yes, that's true and very important. Yes, it is. And it's not easy to do because that takes humility and that takes a lot of patience. A lot of patience to try and actually understand someone. And it's not just like, yes, 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 here, take this. It's like, no, wait a second. You got to like let go of yourself in a sense and try and adopt their mentality, which is, for me especially, maybe it's much harder for other people, I don't know, but for me that's something that's very difficult, is to actually try and put myself in my shoes and actually listen to them from their perspective and try and put their words the same relevance that they have to them, to me, like try and understand what the pain is like. That's hard.
It is.
Really
it's
hard.
Very hard. And I mean, I would like to cite again the 1 Corinthians chapter 13. The first 3 words of verse 4 are, charity is patience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it takes an incredible amount of patience to really try to understand someone, especially if that someone has trouble really are articulating their speech, you know? If someone, especially if maybe they have a speech disorder, you know?
It can be hard to get past that, yeah, definitely.
Or even there could be a language gap, you know? Maybe they're from another country and
that can, yeah.
you know, there's countless obstacles that you could really come up with, but I think patience is such a key virtue to have when you really want to have a deep, meaningful friendship.
Yes. And that patience applies to the listening aspect, but it also applies to the communication aspect. And I think it applies very differently to different people. But, you know, it can be hard to really explain how you feel and what you think, and you can start explaining and go, no, I'm stupid. I can't do this. You know, or you start on a conversation and you're like, no, this is dumb. I shouldn't have started talking, and just feel discouraged. You got to be patient with yourself. It's like, no, okay, keep going. Keep going. Keep going. And like, even when you make an idiot out of yourself, realizing that it doesn't matter. That does not define you. You know, being patient in your own communication is what I'm really trying to say.
Yes. Yeah. That's a really, really great point, to be patient with yourself.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff we can say.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like we could
go on and on about this for hours and hours, and I'm sure there's points of friendship that we've missed, but
I think what we talked about, we did a pretty good job.
Yes.
I feel like
I think we were able to hit on quite a few of the major points of
definitely
of friendship. You know, we were able to define friendship in a way that really made us both happy, you know, with you said a willingness to sacrifice goods and services, and as well, you know, it being characterized by
Love is the big. If you take nothing away from what I say, I'd say take away that love is what makes a friendship worthwhile.
yes, love is what makes it worthwhile, and that's what will keep it worthwhile too. You know, also a sense of mutual respect as well as admiration, concern, and care. You know, we talked about 3 types of friendships. Aristotle's 3 types of friendship being friendships of utility, or how they are useful to you, friendships of delight, or the entertainment that you can derive from spending time with them, and friendships of virtue, which comes from a sense of admiration and respect for another's virtues, which is ultimately the most perfect form of friendship you can have, because virtues they last longer, they last a lifetime.
They last forever.
Yes.
Not just your lifetime. They last throughout all time.
Yes.
I would argue. It's a matter of conviction.
Mm-hmm. So we also talked about what would constitute the ideal friendship, which one point was integrity. That you really have to be your own person. You have to
be firm with where you stand.
Yes,
and not
you have to
compromise.
have courage with what you believe in. You have to have the humility to admit when you're wrong, and that having humility and courage will lead to a certain form of integrity.
Yes.
And that integrity is really seeking the truth and making that truth known, and maybe even going the extra mile to make sure that the
people
truth
have it.
Yes, people should have the truth, and making sure that happens. We talked about another important element being openness and the willingness to be vulnerable and to be honest. To really be able to tell someone how you're feeling, to be able to describe to them what you have gone through, and how that will really sort of build a mutual sense of trust.
Yes.
And lastly, in our ideal friendship, we talked about love. And love, as we talked about, is selfless. It's timeless. It's really constituted by patience and kindness and
willing to sacrifice.
Yes, a willingness to sacrifice your wants and needs for someone else's wants and needs. And to be able to just put someone else before yourself.
Yes, definitely. Put their well-being, before your comfort.
Yes.
I wouldn't say put their well-being above your well-being, because that compromises with integrity.
Yes.
You don't want to be, and by well-being I mean you don't want to go down the trash bin for somebody else, trying to help someone else. That don't interpret it as that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Then we spoke a little bit about the conflicts that you may have in friendship, and how some of these conflicts will be a necessity to friendship and will really help you grow into better friends and to have a deeper and more meaningful relationship. We talked about some of the values that you'll gain from friendship, and also some of the cost that you may have to undergo in having your friendship, having to really be vulnerable, and how
Be open to the pain and
Yes.
the misery that it could involve.
yes, it could, and you could get burnt,
Oh,
but
yes.
that's what vulnerability is. You're leaving yourself open, and you're hoping that the other
Well, I would
person
hope it
won't
was
take
more than a-
advantage.
more than a hope. There is some element of hope, but I would think trusting is
Yes.
a better word.
Yes, trusting would be a better word. And, some of the rewards that come from, that the cost of investment
Mm-hmm.
where, you can have an ideal that you'll strive towards. You can, as I believe you said that Dave Ramsey has said this, that friendship, it's not just my abilities and your abilities. It's my abilities, your abilities, and our abilities together.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, it will multiply. And
Not just add.
exactly. It's not just addition, it's multiplication. And with that, you'll be able to accomplish things that neither of you could even dream of accomplishing on your own, or even if you had two of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I think you did a good job summing up pretty much all of our points. There's a lot there, but we got through it, and I feel happy about it. I'm glad we had this talk.
yes, and I feel that I've really been able to learn a lot. And also, as we've been having this talk, it's been great to really think about some of my friendships, and I've been able to define some of them under the different types, and I've been able to pick out different parts of them, or friendships that I came into where it seemed like it was just personality mirroring.
Oh, yeah. I definitely feel like I gained some sense of clarity with the application in my own life. It's funny that we started with that point and talking about personal. That's a tough one to start with.
It is.
It's a tough
It
point.
is a very tough point.
I
to
don't think
start
any
with.
of these points are really easy to talk about because they're so foundational, so fundamental. It's like at the very bottom of, like, this is most of these things. They're so basic, nobody talks about them, which makes it difficult.
It is. It makes it very difficult, especially when you're trying to define them,
Mm-hmm.
or when you're trying to find examples in your own life, because I think you take a certain amount of it for granted.
Oh, definitely.
And it is very easy to take friends for granted.
Oh, yes. Like, I have not given my friends, and I'll say it, disclaimer, I haven't given my friends anywhere near enough credit. But, yeah, I'm happy with that, and I'm happy to have this conversation with you. And I think this
I
is
was
a good...
very happy to be here as well.
Yeah, but this is a good place to wrap it all up. And I would like to say thank you to all you people out there listening. I'm glad you could join us on At the Root of Knowledge with Philip Rabarzik and Daniel Sheck. Please share your thoughts and comments on the content talked about tonight. We appreciate any feedback and any ideas for future topics. Until next time, goodbye and God bless.